Hey guys, and welcome back to Football Unspoken podcast. I have a pretty interesting topic for you this week, Josh. I'm very interested to hear your opinion on
Yeah,
it.
what you got?
But before we get into that, I'm going to do our customary bit of general knowledge for the week. And for this week, I'm going to ask you: can you tell me there is one manager who's gone on the longest home winning streak of all time? Can you tell me who that manager is and how long that winning streak was?
Unfortunately, for you, I actually know the answer.
Oh
But this would be
no!
really embarrassing if I'm wrong. After I've heard a huge claim, if I'm wrong now, that's a horror. But I'm pretty confident that it's Jose Mourinho.
You are correct. It's Jose Mourinho. Do you know how long it was?
In years or games?
Years.
I think it was 3 years. Am I right about
No,
that?
no. You're way
Oh,
off. You're
oh
way
no.
off. No, it was 9 years. It was from 2002 to 2011. Jose Mourinho never lost a home game.
That's 9 years is actually ridiculous. For some reason
It's
I thought
mental. It's
3.
honestly madness. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
But then onto the topic for this week, Josho. I'm going to put you a bit under the spotlight here, and I'm going to say, in your opinion, is there a severe lack of elite managers in the world?
Oh. I need a second to digest that because you hit me with a wrecking ball this morning. I yeah, I'm gonna say yes. Because when you analyze like across the leagues, and you'd say who are the elite managers in the world, you'd probably say Klopp and Guardiola. There's discussions to be had about other managers, but I think if we're being ultra critical, those are the two elite managers in the world. And I'm trying to even consider now like managers at other top clubs, not just Premier League. You look at Bayern; they've got Thomas Tuchel. Unfortunately, that hasn't gone well. Xavi at Barcelona. He's not Ancelotti actually. So I think you're harsh to not put Ancelotti in there. So I'd put those three probably. Ancelotti. The point is 3 is not a very high number. So I'm going. I'm going yes. I think there's a huge shortage.
That's fair enough. I mean, are you not potentially being a bit harsh on Jose Mourinho, on Eric Ten Hag, who's obviously done very well in the Dutch league, even Mikel Arteta?
Don't give me Ten Hag as an elite manager discussion. No one's having that. No one's having that. Not even the Man U fans are having that as an elite manager. Although you did send me this week an interesting statistic on Ten Hag that he's the highest percentage winning manager uh, for Man U. So maybe we've got this wrong. Anyway, Arteta for me, I'm not saying he's probably one. If you were to do like tiers, he's probably one tier below. Like I don't know, if you go elite and then world class is the next one. He's probably world class. I will say maybe that's some bias as an Arsenal fan because he's only been Arsenal manager, and I do think you see like a Klopp or Guardiola or Ancelotti. That I put them in elite because they've done it at many different clubs and many different leagues, and that's not a Messi. He's not the best because he didn't go and play on a Stoke on a Tuesday night. I just mean like when you can prove you can do it with different teams and different challenges. I think that maybe differentiates versus being Arteta, for all we know, could be really good at one thing, and that's why he's done well with Arsenal. And who was the third one? You said Ten Hag, Arteta, or who was the third shout you gave me?
I think it was Xavi. I'm pretty the Barcelona manager.
No, I mean that falls into the same camp as Arteta. Just that he's only done. He did well in the Saudi league, but
Yeah,
I don't think
actually,
he.
to be fair, the
Yeah.
third one was Mourinho. The third one was
Oh,
Mourinho.
Mourinho. Yeah. I'm. Do you know what? If there's anyone who deserves the shout, if you pushed me and said you have to add a fourth manager, I'm adding Mourinho. I think a lot of people hate on Mourinho and say he's lost it, and this is this is so funny. I'm not trying to overtake or take over the podcast, but I thought a really interesting topic for another day would have been, there's a debate with Mourinho. It's like, oh, is he outdated now? His tactics and his mentality on football, is that outdated? And I'm not going to get into that, but that's a great discussion for another day.
Yeah,
My point is just, I think if there's a fourth elite manager, it's Mourinho still for me.
that's fair. I think in terms of the topic, that was definitely one of the ones I thought about bringing up. It's still in my list that I would love to touch on, because the one thing I was going to say is, without switching lanes, is about his antics and if they've maybe overshadowed. But we can touch on that on another day. But yeah, I do. Overall, I've thrown a lot of names at you here. I was tempted to throw Eddie Howe just to see a reaction, but I gave you Erik ten Hag instead. But overall I do agree. I think when you look back on years gone by when Mourinho was definitely an elite manager, and you had Arsene Wenger, who, yeah, he might not have won as much, but he was an elite manager. He came and he changed the Premier League. He changed the face of it. Sir Alex Ferguson, Bobby Robson, all these, and that's just in the Premier League. There's not even going into your Real Madrids and Barcelonas and Bayerns back in the day. But the second kind of thing I wanted to touch on in this one, because I was thinking about this this week, and I threw Arteta out there for a reason. Not because I think he's an elite manager yet, but the reason I say this is because I came across something this week and it made me think. And do you feel like Arteta should be allowed to be a bit more smug than he is this year? When you go back, you think about how kind of berated he was by opposition fans, his own fans, and specifically like the media, with Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, saying he's going to get Arsenal to the Champions League and he's not going to do anything more. And now this is the second consecutive title charge. He's clearly done it. He's clearly done a much better job. The reason I kind of bring this up is because, does the Premier League not really lend itself to the growth of elite managers? Because when you think about these managers who became elite, they became elite in external leagues and then came to the Premier League as an elite manager. Whereas right now you've got Eddie Howe, who's under immense pressure, and I don't think it's fair pressure, for the job he did with Newcastle last year, and he's not doing the same this year. You got Roberto De Zerbi, who's under immense pressure for taking a mid-table Brighton team to the cusp of the Champions League and not being consistent. And you have Ange Postecoglou, who's come in and immediately is under pressure for, like, he's been given mass accolades, but he's under pressure. And then Arteta's gone through the pressure, and he's now on the cusp of being an elite manager. I would like to know what you think about it.
Well, that's a great second question, and I hadn't considered it before. But as you were explaining it, I was in strong agreement that I don't know if you were just a question, but the Premier League definitely does not lend itself to building up managers. Because I was thinking while you were mentioning the question, I was like, can I think of any examples of a manager who I think has built themselves up during the Premier League in terms of like substantially? And the only one I could think of was Pochettino, because of his time at Tottenham, and then he built his career. And even though he left at a lower point, I guess he left close enough to that Champions League final and stuff that he then got the PSG job on the back of it. But if you look at another manager who's, I would say, also in that second tier with Arteta's and whatever, you have to say is Unai Emery at Aston Villa. And he'd come to Arsenal after being at PSG and winning, what did he win, 3 Europas in a row with Seville or something like that? And then he went to PSG. Okay, winning the French league doesn't really count with PSG, but he did. And then he's come to Arsenal, and it's not worked out, and it really tarnished his reputation from there. And it was really interesting because he went back then to Villarreal, won the Europa again, and I think got them into Champions. Well, he would have, because he won the Europa, would have got them Champions League. I don't know how they did in the league. And then he's gone to Villa, where he's doing brilliantly. Because you brought up De Zerbi, And I was thinking about this is that people have been going on and on and on about De Zerbi, and it's all kind of come off the train tracks a little bit. He's been found out, or the tactics have been worked out a little bit, and it's come off the train tracks a little bit. Where in the shadow, Villa have outperformed them quite substantially this season, and I don't feel like Villa are getting the same accolades that Brighton were getting last year or at the start of the season. I just think that's an interesting side. Today is just a topic of side topics, but well, getting my trade back on the tracks, I don't think the Premier League lends itself to building up managers. I actually think it's a huge risk league for a lot of managers, particularly if you're trying to build a reputation to get the next big job. You're probably safer going to the Spanish, German, or French league and performing well with the team there. But hopefully you speak the language, because if you're an English manager, I'm not suggesting going off to Germany, you don't speak a word. We've seen managers like Gary Neville do that in Spain. It didn't work out so well. So I think that's a great insight, actually, for how the Premier League actually damages managers' reputations. One last thing I'll leave you with just on that is I think a big thing is being able to step away at the right time from a Premier League job. And 99% of managers can't do it. And two managers who seemingly can and have or are is Ferguson. If you think about when Ferguson retired, we know it wasn't his plan to retire that season. We know that because Van Persie gave an interview after and said how he was really annoyed with Ferguson because when he joined Manchester United, Ferguson said he wasn't retiring within 1 year. Hence, Van Persie signed a multi-year deal. But I think Ferguson identified they've won the league with an aging team. City are only going to get better year on year, and he'd rather go out on a high, winning the league and whatever else, than what Arsene Wenger did, where you have multiple fifth or sixth finishes, and then you leave on that reputation. What do they call it? Like recency bias, effectively. And if you look at Klopp, he was the second example I had. Klopp's resigning at the end of this season or leaving at the end of this season from Liverpool. And I was thinking that's very smart, because are Liverpool going to get a better chance to win trophies / Premier League, which I know is the big one for them, than this season? The City, obviously, at their weakest, they probably have been in 5 or 6 seasons. So if there was a season to end on a high, this would be it for Klopp. So I really actually admire the fact that he's able to step away seemingly at the right time. And I think most managers in the Premier League don't have that. They just can't pull away. And then you end up in like Pochettino didn't get it too bad at Spurs, but he tarnished. Imagine he'd left off that Champions League final, or Arsene Wenger after one of the FA Cup wins or something like that.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. I think a great example of that is Roy Hodgson. I think Roy Hodgson is probably the best example in the recent year. Like he should not have gone on this year. He did so well last year. He had nothing to win. He had everything to lose and nothing to win from this year. And I think that is a very good point. I think, and what you said earlier is that I think going to the Premier League is probably the biggest risk of your career, because there's this idea that the Premier League is the most competitive, so you should be able to beat almost anyone. And you can see that in your mid-table teams when they lose to a Tottenham, who are a top 4 team, and you get a team who's finishing like 11th, and they're very disappointed to have lost to a Tottenham, rather than going like you would in maybe the Spanish league or the or the German league, where you go, not much we could have done. And I think that's part of it. And then you add the fact that I think the English press are some of the most brutal. And you see that in Arteta, when he doesn't do well, gets absolutely lambasted. Eddie Howe this year has been consistently under the pump when he's done a fantastic job in the 2 years he's been there. So I think we both in pretty big agreement in the fact that the Premier League doesn't lend itself to developing elite managers, and I think that's something I would like to see. I would like to be able to look back on a manager who's come through the Premier League, and maybe Eddie Howe will be the one. Maybe Eddie Howe will win the Premier League with Newcastle in 5 years' time and be the one to go, I became elite through just playing in the Premier League. And I would love to see that. I would love to also hear what you guys have to think about it, what you say. Does the Premier League lend itself to elite managers? And please leave us a comment on anything you'd like us to talk about, what you'd like to hear from us. And until next week, Josh, thanks very much. And thank you guys for listening. Have a great one.